Well, so I grew up in Iceland, and I was there until I was about 20, 21 years old. I had a very typical sort of Icelandic upbringing. I had come from a large family, very carefree life, very independent, very much sort of learning to deal with nature, and did a lot of hiking and camping in a beautiful place, big vistas and big ideas. I wanted to study journalism, and at that time in Iceland they didn't teach journalism. And so I was choosing between Norway, the US, and Switzerland. And then I decided on the US because they answered my request. And so I came to the University of Minnesota. I had an uncle who was a captain on a cargo boat that sailed between Iceland and here. And so I called him up and I said, well, is there any chance that I can go with you? And so he checked with his bosses and they said yes. And so I was the only passenger on that cargo boat. And we sailed from Iceland to Gloucester, which is where the Icelandic, I think, Seafood Corporation or something has their factory. And so they were unloading the fish. And me, I didn't really know much about this place. I certainly know nothing about Minnesota. Nobody told me how cold it was going to be. I remember when I was complaining about how cold it was, everybody was saying, oh, but you're from Iceland, this must be normal. And there's nothing normal about this. The only other place that has it cold like this is Siberia. People were very nice. They would always say, hi, how are you? But they never liked my answers because I assumed it was a question. I never learned until later that it was actually more like a greeting. I had never heard the Minnesota accent before. And so I had my hearing tested. I thought I didn't hear what my professors were saying. I loved being in a classroom of 200 people. A lot of people hated it, but I absolutely loved it. Coming from the smallest country in Europe to here, I just thought it was fantastic to be in a big classroom. So I was sat right in the middle, so I could feel like 100 people behind me, 100 people below me. And then my visa ran out, so I had to go home. And I got a job on a radio station in Iceland, so I went home. So the re-entry shock of going to Iceland was, in a way, so much stronger than the culture shock of coming here. I think I expected some things to be different, and so I was more prepared for some kind of a shock that I would have here. I wasn't quite prepared for the re-entry shock that it takes to go home. And I also arrived in a recession, and so newspapers were not hiring. And so it was hard to find a job that was more than a part-time job. And so I thought, well, I was always going to do a master's degree anyway, so this is obviously at the time. So I decided to go for international education, which some of the professors at the University of Minnesota said, Thorunn, you really need to be in this program. I met the man that I then married, and he's from the Ivory Coast. English was the only language that we had in common and that we could both stay here. He doesn't speak Icelandic and I don't speak French. So we sort of decided that this was going to be the place that we would then stay. And so then came all the struggle of trying to find a work visa and all that stuff. That was very complicated. It was hard that every 6 months we had to face that maybe I was going to be kicked out of the country or he was going to be kicked out of the country. I had been applying for something called the visa lottery. And I had done that for many years and I never got it, never. I think I applied for like 12 years. And then one day, I got the letter in the mail that I got the visa lottery. And it could not have come at a better time. And we had a son. And we realized that he was he was an American citizen, but still, if something happened to the two of us, we didn't even understand what was going to happen to him. It didn't look good. So we got married in a hurry. I was happy about the fact that I was getting married after we had our son, because that was kind of the Icelandic way. We like to have our children and then get married. And so I felt good about that. I got a job at the University of Minnesota. My field or my sort of expertise has evolved into becoming an intercultural trainer. And so I help people from different cultures to work together. So international students who are at the University of Minnesota who have all kinds of issues come up, there are cultural differences, I help bridge those differences. I help teach American staff and faculty how to work better with people from different cultures. In these last 2 years, my skills have been called for a lot because of all the tension that is here. And I'm able to walk into very difficult situations and help people bridge those. And so I think that probably would be my sort of favorite and my biggest and probably the most consequential contribution. Yeah.